What the herd hates most is a man who thinks differently. They don't really hate his opinion, but they hate his courage to think for himself, to be different. With these words, Schopenhauer puts us directly in front of one of the deepest human dilemmas. Intellectual freedom is not rejected because it's wrong or deviant, but because it's a silent betrayal of the hidden system that governs human relationships, the power of the group. The herd doesn't oppose truth in itself. Truth doesn't provoke its anger unless someone dares to own it alone. It gets angry when an individual dares to differentiate themselves, to break the false harmony that unifies them, to say, "I see with my own eyes, not with yours." This line opens wide doors for us in philosophy, psychology, history, and sociology. Let's first contemplate its philosophical implications. What Schopenhauer says is a deep echo of what Socrates wrote 2000 years ago when he refused to remain silent about his questions and drank poison to stay true to different thinking. Socrates wasn't killed because he was wrong. He was killed because he had the courage to think against the current, and his very existence exposed the fragility of the city's certainty. Thus, we understand that what the herd hates is not the idea but the courage to carry it alone. In this context, we remember Nietzsche, who described the free man as having a free spirit that doesn't belong to the herd but walks alone in the wilderness. In his book, Beyond Good and Evil, Nietzsche describes how the greatest crimes in the herd's eyes are not murder or betrayal but the courage to think outside prevailing morality because that threatens the foundations of its shared existence. The herd doesn't need truth, it needs conformity, the reassurance that comes from saying, "We all think the same." From here, we can extend the thread towards sociology, like Emil Durkheim, when he wrote about collective consciousness. He saw that society creates for itself a structure of values and beliefs, and anyone who deviates from it becomes an outlier, not in a pathological sense but in an existential one. Society, to maintain its cohesion, can't tolerate the stranger. Here, we understand why the different thinker is seen as a threat, even if they're truthful. Their deviation breaks the image of unity that the herd sanctifies. But what about psychology? Freud, when discussing the mechanism of projection or resistance, pointed out that what we hate in others is merely a reflection of what we fear facing in ourselves. Here, the genius of Schopenhauer's statement becomes clear. The herd doesn't hate the idea itself but hates being reminded by an individual that thought is possible outside the framework. They can't bear to see a mirror reflecting the weakness of their certainty, so they shatter the mirror instead of facing their image. To root this perspective historically, it's enough to recall examples like Galileo, who wasn't tried because mathematics betrayed him but because he dared to say that the Earth isn't the center of the universe. Giordano Bruno was burned not because he was wrong but because he had the courage to say that the universe is infinite, a statement that threatened the entire ecclesiastical structure. Martin Luther wasn't hated for his idea of reform but because he had the courage to post his theses on the church doors. The courage is the crime, not the truth. If we move to literature, Dostoevsky's The Brothers Karamazov makes the monk Ivan face the grand church not by denying its truth but by questioning it about freedom. The church in the novel isn't afraid of losing truth but of people having the courage to use their minds without guardianship. What Schopenhauer says is not a passing phrase but a key to understanding human existence. The herd hates the different not because they're wrong but because they expose the mechanism of obedience that they live by. Different thinking is a declaration that the group is not a fate and that the individual can stand alone and see the world with independent eyes. When we contemplate Schopenhauer's statement from another angle, we discover that its essence is what Karl Marx later called alienation. When an individual finds themselves between their free self and collective consciousness, Marx talked about the alienation of the worker who produces something they don't own the spirit of. But we can read this concept more broadly. Anyone who thinks against the mainstream lives an alienation because they see what others don't, becoming exiled even in the heart of their city. The herd hates the different because they expose this alienation, reminding them of the collective negation, not freedom but a doctrine. This opens us up to Foucault, who saw power not always in the hands of the ruler or state but distributed in the fabric of society itself. The power of the group, the power of the herd, can be harsher than the power of tyrants. A tyrant can be resisted or assassinated, but the herd is unseen, surrounding you from all directions, in school, on the street, in cafes, and workplaces. When you think